This is the second part of my 2008 Buick Lucerne with a 3.8 engine, 6-cylinder. And I wanted to mention to you on part 2 of the engine mounts, I wanted to give you a little advice for the front engine mount to last a little longer. Here's it's in pretty good shape, like I said in the first video. I take care of it. One thing about these, you're gonna have to spend a lot of money in them. Not a whole lot, but you got to nickel and dime them to keep them on the road, to keep them running, to get to the 200,000 to 300,000 mile mark. Let's get right to the engine mount. As you can see, let's focus it in right there. There's your engine mount right there. That's just the front, right behind the radiator. So what breaks is the rubber around this engine mount, because most of these things are made in China. I mean, I haven't gotten anything better that's out there. And what it is the torque of the engine. So as you can see, this is the front of the engine, and this is the one that mainly goes. You know, I've heard horror stories that some people replace them every year, every 2 or 3 years. This is going to be my third one, and this car only has 94,000 miles on it. So with 94,000 miles, and I don't drive it crazy, I don't gun it, I don't drive it like a hot rod or anything, because it's definitely not a hot rod. But there's a lot of torque on this engine, and that's what I want to mention to you. So when you give it gas from a stop sign or a red light, and this engine lifts up in the front, there's like a lot of torque, a lot of pressure on this engine with this big ass transmission they have in here. Heavy duty big ass transmission. And what it does, it pulls the engine and pulls it up in the front here. So there's constant torque and, pounds per pressure, whatever you want to call it, that's on this one engine mount. I used to have 2 in the LeSabres, one here and one there, that would keep the engine down, more so than just a single one in the front. They do have a torque strut right here, but it helps a little bit. But I don't think that does much of a job. I mean, it helps. Keeps the engine a little bit this way. But it's this front one. So, and what I want to recommend highly is when you do get it done for a brand new one, see that hole there? Put a big chain, well, actually a thin chain, whatever could fit in that hole, and go around the bracket, all the way around the frame. You can either come up through that hole again, if it depends on the size of the chain, or just take it through the hole and then come around, do it once, and put a little lock thing on it to make it tight, and to keep this engine mount down so that there's hardly any torque pulling on the rubber. So if you put a chain on there, or you can even get a zip tie that's really heavy duty zip tie, about 28 inches long or so, and stick it through that hole and bring it up and around and zip tie it. So zip tie this bracket right here, this top bracket. The pressure will zip tie it towards the frame. And you could put 2 or 3 zip ties, I guess, if you can. Fit it through that hole or whatever. And worst case scenario, you could even drill a couple more holes. One over there, just as long as you don't drill through any lines or anything. And put a few zip ties around it if it's easier. Or put a couple little thin chains around it, like link chains that don't break. You want a heavy duty chain, but you don't want it too thick either, that you can't get it through the hole or get it through the frame or somehow. So all you want to do is keep this bracket down towards the frame, so there's hardly any pressure on this stuff here, this rubber crap. So that's a little advice I'll give you. Hope it helps. I'm sure it will if you do it. and you won't have to replace one of these engine mounts for a long time. Like I said, but make sure you get a heavy duty zip tie that's rated a lot of pounds. Don't just get a real thin one or anything like that, because it will just break. So at least put a couple in there. I think they're like 1/2 inch thick, 1/2 inch wide zip ties. And I don't know, they're rated maybe 1,000 pounds or something, I don't know. Because this has a lot of torque. So if you zoom this engine at a red light and you push down that accelerator, you're putting a hell of a lot of pressure and torque to bring that engine up. And chances you're gonna break this engine mount, especially the cheap ass China shit that they make, the cheap ass rubber, and we know it is, and the cheap ass iron that they make. You know, we had the best iron mills in the country years ago. Now the big corporations, you know, make all the cheap China steel. I mean the steel, and it's just garbage anymore. You know, everything breaks. Everything breaks. So, and then like I said, if you want to replace this torque mount, this torque strut, I just put this in here. This is not doing shit, so I didn't have any real stuff, but you could see it's cracking there. See the crack? So that, and this was just a year old, about a year and a half old. And then the other engine mount is right there. See it right there in the rear. And that's broken too. That's got to be replaced. But that only has a little bit of pressure when you put it in reverse. So that one will last you a long time. You don't have to wrap anything around that one, you know, unless you zoom it in reverse like 50 miles an hour, you know. But, and then there's that transmission mount on the side. So there you go. What's easy about this car is replacing all these coils. Of course, replacing the spark plugs, cables. Coils are really easy. The torque strut is easy to replace. The alternator is easy to replace. So there's a lot of stuff on this engine that's easy to replace. The only bitch is getting those spark plugs in the back. The last two spark plugs over there behind the engine are the worst. These two are not bad. Or I'm sorry, this one's not bad. Those two over there are bad. And these three right here are good. They're easy to replace in the front of the engine there. So there you go, a little advice to make your front engine mount last, and it'll keep your engine towards the frame there so it doesn't bounce around too much, like especially if you put a brand new engine mount on. So all right.